Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about the DDI Agency Registry. So for those unfamiliar with it, I'm going to give a little bit of information about what the DDI Agency Registry is, a little bit of history of it, and then I'm going to go over the new features that have recently been added to the registry. So before we even talk about the DDI Agency Registry, the first thing to talk about is DDI Agency Identifiers. So DDI Agency Identifiers are a unique string that's assigned to organizations and individuals by the DDI Alliance. And these agency identifiers are used to create one part of the unique identifiers that are used for all DDI items. The other two parts besides the agency ID are an item ID, an identifier for a specific piece of DDI metadata within an organization, and a version number. So these agency IDs, what they do is they create a unique namespace for each organization using the DDI standards. And this allows for everyone using DDI to ensure that they're creating globally unique IDs. There's no cost to register or receive an agency ID from the DDI Alliance, but there is an approval process. So you can apply to have an agency identifier assigned to you, and then that will be approved by the DDI Alliance, and then the agency ID that you requested will be given to you to use for all of your DDI metadata creation. So that's what an agency identifier is used for. But there is some approval processes and technical services that go along with that. And that's what the DDI Agency Registry provides. It has two main functions. One is to manage all of the agency IDs that are assigned by the Alliance to track which organizations or individuals they are assigned to. The other main point for the DDI registry is to provide service discovery. So if someone comes across a DDI identifier, they can use the agency ID to find different services. It could be REST services, web services, other types of services that that organization or individual has said that they are providing for their DDI. So those are the two main goals that the DDI Agency Registry has: managing agency IDs, agency ID assignments, and service discovery. So a little bit of history about the DDI Registry. First, there was the Collectica DDI Resolver, which was something that we launched back in 2009. And it was a free service to resolve DDI URNs to service endpoints. And it included DNS service record resolution. So that's using the DNS system to look up services for specific agency IDs. And it also had a website where browsers could, or where web users could enter a DDI URN in their web browser and be redirected to a page that had content about that DDI item. It also included open source clients for DNS service record lookups for DDI agency IDs, and those were provided in several languages. So a few years later, that Collectica DDI Resolver service was open sourced and provided to the DDI Alliance, and that code became the current DDI registry. So that's available publicly at registry.ddialliance.org, and also the source code for that is available on GitHub. So anyone can take a look at that, run their own registry if they want. As part of this open sourcing, several new features were added so that it would be easy for the DDI Alliance to manage all of the agency identifiers. So this included adding individual user accounts to the DDI registry, self-service registration for requesting new agency identifiers, it had an approval process for the DDI Alliance to approve requested agency identifiers. It allowed you to search and find which organization or individual used or was the owner of an agency ID. And it also included the ability to delegate that DNS service resolution to your own organization's name servers. So that allowed different organizations to publish even more records than what were published by the DDI registry in the DNS space. So that functioned fairly well for several years, 7 years. But in 2018, the DDI registry got another big upgrade. This included adding additional validation for agency IDs for when they're being requested. It had a lot of improvements for the administrators working at the DDI Alliance. It added email notifications and it allowed them more information about what was being requested for agency IDs and who was doing that. And it was also the whole DDI registry was rebranded to match the updated DDI Alliance website. So since launching and through all those iterations, the DDI registry had always had DNS service record-based resolution. And what DNS service records allow is for people to use the DNS system to look up an agency ID or a sub-agency ID and find out what services are provided. And a service could provide a host name and a port that showed where a user or program could contact that service. So this was very useful because it did allow service discovery, but there were several drawbacks that were found. The first is that DNS service record resolution, while very useful, is not readily available to every programming environment that is now popular these days. For example, you can't create DNS requests using JavaScript when running in a web browser. And even when you are in some other programming language where you can use DNS requests, requesting DNS service records usually isn't a built-in function, and you would have to find or use one of those open source libraries that we mentioned earlier that were client applications for the DNS service record resolution. So it was a little bit of a hurdle for people to fully use this service resolution. Another issue that came up is that there's not a way to specify additional information about a service in a DNS service record. You really only get a host name and a port. But it would be very useful if, for example, if you're running a REST service, if you could specify an expected path that your service is using, because that enables some more lookup and resolution features. So this year, another update was done to the DDI registry. And the new feature, the big new feature that it included is HTTP-based service resolution. So HTTP-based service resolution is similar to the DNS service resolution. It allows agency IDs and sub-agency IDs to specify services that the organizations or individuals that registered them are providing for DDI lookup. But it's in addition to just that host and port, this also allowed HTTP locations to be given as services. So this allows the individual or organization that registered an agency ID to log into the DDI registry, provide HTTP endpoints for services, and then these can be looked up using HTTP by many different programming languages, including JavaScript in the browser. In addition to just providing an HTTP path for a service. The registry also allows using tokens that will be replaced when creating the service path. So for example, the tokens are the agency, identifier, and version. Those were the three parts of the DDI identifier that we saw earlier. And then also the DDI URN as a whole itself are the available replacement tokens. So what this allows is for an agency or individual running a service, HTTP service, to specify a complete path to a location at their organization where they know, where the service endpoint for a specific DDI item is. So in this example, we can see that a service is located at example.org, and it's actually going to be directing you to this specific page for a specific DDI item using that agency identifier and version replacement token. So this is great because it allows resolution of individual items using HTTP. Before, you would have had to know what service was provided and how that service expected to receive the requests for information about a DDI identifier or URN. With the HTTP resolution, the agencies can specify that in the DDI registry. So in addition to being able to specify HTTP resolution endpoints, there's also a REST API for programmers to automatically find all available HTTP services for an agency ID or for a sub-agency ID. And that will, I'll give them a list of all of the available services for each agency or sub-agency along with the HTTP endpoints. So this enables a couple new features. So one of them is on the DDI registry. Before, when you went to the DDI registry, it would say enter a agency identifier, and you could search for an agency identifier to find out, which organization or individual had that agency identifier registered. Now you can enter a DDI URN or an agency identifier.
5 minutes, Dan.
Sure. So with that, we're going to just take a look at a quick demo of this in action. So this is the DDI registry. The first thing we're going to do is see how you create a HTTP resolution service. So you can click on your agencies. We have several agencies approved. One of them is my own agency, us.dan. If I click manage, I can see information about my agency and my sub-agency. So I have us.dan and us.dan, that example, as agency or sub-agency assignments. The new column with this new upgrade is this HTTP resolution services. So if I click edit, I can see that there's 3 types of services available: a website, DDI, and a DDI set. So these are the 3 built-in service types, but users can add their own service types as well. So using these URL templates, we can define endpoints for where the DDI URN should be, or parts of the DDI identifier should be included in these service lookups. So going back to the main page, the next thing we'll do is we'll look up a DDI URN. Click search. We see that the DDI Agency Registry has given us 3 service locations along with the filled out endpoints for where we can find more information. So if I click on the website, we can see that this takes us to a page describing the information in that DDI URN that I'm running from our office. So this is my own organization's homepage providing information about that DDI URN, but we were directed there by the DDI registry. Another endpoint is an endpoint that provides the DDI description So we can see that this endpoint has provided us the DDI XML of the physical instance that was identified with that DDI URN. And this last endpoint gives us a file. So the file is provided by my website, and it contains all of the DDI content for that DDI URN and the items related to that DDI URN. So that this is called a set of items. So it includes the physical instance along with variables, categories, code lists that describe everything about this data set. So that's a quick overview of the new HTTP-based resolution features in the DDI registry. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.